What we wanted to do with this panel is really give you all as an audience a sense of the significance of the partnerships that we in Texas and TxDOT specifically rely upon to successfully develop and deliver our transportation projects. And having worked both in Texas and out of Texas for different types of organizations, I really believe that Texas and TxDOT, more so than any place that I've ever been involved with, relies on and makes use of partnerships outside of just the DOT, working with the MPOs, working with regional mobility authorities, and a host of others to help deliver our transportation projects. And we would not be able to do that successfully without these other individuals outside of the DOT. And what we wanted to do with this panel today is just share a little bit about how these partnerships have been successful, what's made them successful, and where we see them as key assets to delivering our transportation infrastructure, not only today, but in the future. And so we'll have a conversation with that with a broad cross-section of folks that we work with day in and day out. Wanted to start off with, though, and introduce to you Commissioner Bruce Bugg. Commissioner Bugg is nearing your one-year anniversary with the Texas Department of Transportation. Commissioner Bugg is from San Antonio. He was appointed to the commission by Governor Greg Abbott in February of last year. And Commissioner Bugg has a significant resume and of chairmanships and executive directorships. He's chairman of the Tobin Foundation, a philanthropic performing arts foundation in San Antonio. He also has a background in banking, chairman of several financial institutions, and very fortunate to have Commissioner Bugg as one of our leaders within the Department of Transportation. Commissioner, I think this is your first transportation forum.
Yes, sir.
Any initial impressions on it?
I'm impressed by how many folks are here, and I like the choice of your topic, partnerships. And if I may, let me just kind of jump in there. And as you mentioned, I'm coming up on my one-year anniversary. The person that's coming up on his one-year anniversary sooner than I will is Governor Greg Abbott. And I was fortunate enough, as we know, Governor Abbott was inaugurated this month 1 year ago. And about 3 weeks after he was inaugurated, he called and asked me to serve on as a commissioner on the Texas Transportation Commission. And I told him, and I'll share with the audience here, when the governor called me, I said, I've got to be honest, I don't have any background at all in transportation. The only thing I know is I get in my car every day and I head out to work and I get stuck in traffic. And he said, that's all you need to know right there. Well, since that time, with the help of Mark Williams and many people at TxDOT, and I have to say the governor's staff has just been awesome. I worked directly with Chuy Gonzalez and Stephen Albright with the governor's staff. Many of you know Stephen and Chuy, but all the way from Daniel Hodge, Chief of Staff, the governor himself, and I had dinner a couple of weeks ago. There is an intense focus on what the Texas Department of Transportation is doing. And let me just kind of set the stage for one of the things that I've been asked to do. The governor asked me, and then you'll recall, Mark, that in September of last year, actually September 23rd, Governor Abbott called on the Texas Transportation Commission to take on a congestion relief initiative. And the day after that call came out from the governor, Chairman Lewis appointed me to lead that congestion relief initiative. And that's really been a focus of mine really since I was appointed. And here's the deal. Right after I got appointed in February of last year, we all heard the state demographer coming out and saying that based on their studies, the state of Texas, which currently has a population of 27.7 million folks, is set to double by 2050 to as much as 54 million Texans in this state in 2050. We also know that 65% of Texans live in really 5 major metropolitan areas, Fort Worth, Dallas, Houston, here in Austin, and our hometown, San Antonio. And if you look at one of the first things that I was curious about was, okay, if we're set to double from 27 million to 54, let's say, in 35 years, that has major policy implications, and it has major implications for everybody sitting in this room. Because getting back to the partnership thing, if we're going to start tackling not only our congestion today, we've got to start tackling how we're going to address the needs of our Texans for tomorrow. So one of the things that I asked TxDOT to do was basically work with the State Demographer's Office and come up with what I call heat maps. And Mark, you know that term all too well because you've been helping me on that. And what we wanted to do was really kind of plot on where is that population going to go. And as you might guess, not only today do we have the 65% of Texans living in those 5 metropolitan areas, but as you kind of plot that out, what you'll find is that Fort Worth and Dallas just become much bigger, interconnected. Houston just continues to grow. Austin and San Antonio will become relatively indistinguishable. You'll just be seeing one city limit sign after another. And Austin and San Antonio will grow towards each other. I was listening to the former president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, Richard Fisher, yesterday, and CNBC did a special on the state of Texas yesterday, and I was trying to get the highlights last night, and I thought it was interesting that he keyed in on the reason why Texas has so much economic success is, and he specifically mentioned the Fort Worth, Dallas area, the Houston area, Austin, San Antonio, and he said those 5 major metropolitan areas will continue to be the economic driver for the state of Texas. So getting back to this congestion relief initiative, Mark, I shared with you yesterday, I don't know if Senator Kirk Watson is in the audience, but I think Senator Watson handpicked the hotel room I'm staying at here at the JW Marriott because I'm on the 32nd floor with a floor-to-glass ceiling on the east side, and all I can see is the congestion on I-35 from my hotel room. And so I think he put the hotel staff up to that. But the reality is that we know congestion relief is essential. The governor led that in the last legislative session. The Texas legislature on both the House and the Senate side jumped in. The result was all these new funding streams that give us the tools to work with to tackle, and I like to say to try to get the ammunition we need to put the 18-inch guns on congestion relief. We can't do it without the funding. So the Texas legislature acted, the governor led, and then we all know that the Texas voters, by an 83% vote margin, and I think you wouldn't mind an 83% approval rate.
I'd take it.
Is that okay with you,
Yeah,
Kevin?
I would definitely take that.
Okay, if it's okay with Kevin,
This March 1st, I'd prefer that.
But 83% of Texans voted strongly in favor of Proposition 7. So now it becomes incumbent upon us. So getting back to partnership, how are we going to do this? Well, the governor's led. The governor tells me, turn dirt. Message heard loud and clear. How do we turn dirt? This is where the partnership comes in. So we can't sit in the Greer building here in Austin and say, turn dirt, let's get it going. So we're represented up on the stage today by our fellow partners that are going to make it happen. We're going to have to work at TxDOT very closely with our MPOs in these major metropolitan areas, and the MPOs and TxDOT are going to have to work very closely where we can with all of the friends at AGC, our contractors, our consultants. And one of the things that we're looking at as part of this congestion relief initiative is how can we've kind of given ourselves a dual mandate at TxDOT, and that is, number one, how can we shorten the time frame? Let's go back and challenge, and I was glad to hear James Bass, our new executive director, say that it's hard in this new era that the governor has ushered in. Governor Abbott wants this to be basically customer service focused. And all of us do get in our cars, all of us do get stuck, And so when James Bass said yesterday, you know, as a user, I think he said he's reverse men's club hair club. I'm not a member of that. So
I'm not a member either.
But the point is that we are going to be
Is that going to be my first question?
we're going to be very customer service centric as we lay out these plans. So one, we want to look and challenge how can we shorten the time frames to get things done. The other part of that mandate with the new funding streams is we have this responsibility to the Texas taxpayers to basically stretch those dollars as far as we can stretch them and get as many lane miles out of those dollars as we possibly can in the shortest amount of time. I know that's a lot, but that's why the partnerships with not only the elected officials and the appointed officials at the state, at the county, at the city level, but we're going to have to work very closely and depend upon very strongly our contractor community.
That's right. Well, what I'd like to do is as you've teed it up, Commissioner, talking about some of the partnerships, what we have represented here on this panel is really pairs of our district engineers with some of the key partners that we rely upon in each of their regions, and wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about some of the initiatives and the activities that have been successful in those areas, and wanted to start with your neighborhood, Commissioner, and we have Commissioner Kevin Wolf, who is also the co-chair of the Bexar County Metropolitan, or now the Alamo Metropolitan Planning Organization, joined by our district engineer Mario Jorge. And one of the things that has been going on there in the San Antonio area is related to the congestion initiative that you mentioned, Commissioner. But looking at some of the major projects, looking at some of the funding structures that had been originally set up for those projects, and then considering some of the new funding resources that, as you mentioned, Commissioner, Governor Abbott and the legislature made available, and making decisions about how to restructure those. And as a result, there was recently unanimous action by the MPO to remove tolls from 281. I know that wasn't an easy decision to make, but a significant decision. And wanted just to open it up to Commissioner Wolf and Mario to talk a little bit about the process that you all go through to engage, not only coordinate between yourselves, but the other stakeholders in the region, some of which don't always sing from the same hymn book.
Sure, absolutely. You know, when I was on San Antonio City Council, the then Mayor Phil Hardberger asked me to serve on the MPO, analogous to Governor Abbott asking you to serve on the Transportation Commission, except I was a little more forceful with the mayor. I said, hell no, I'm not serving on the MPO. I said, you know, they've got that anti-toll person that's yelling at them all the time. They can't get anything done. There's no way I'm serving on the MPO, and I didn't. And then I got elected county commissioner, and the county judge came in. And for those of you who don't know, I'm related to the county judge. and he came in and he said, I want you to go on the MPO. And I said, hell no, I'm not going on the MPO. Those folks, they can't get anything done. And he looked at me and goes, I don't care, you're going. And so I've been there 7 years, and I can tell you it has been one of the best things I've done since I've been in elected office. I will admit that we were pretty dysfunctional when I first got there. And there was a very rocky relationship between our RMA and TxDOT. I'm not sure where the RMA got their sales skills from, but it was kind of like this. It was, you know, they'd turn to TxDOT and say, you don't know what the hell you're doing, now give me some money. and that was about that was about the level of the relationship. It took us a good 3-4 years to really straighten some of those things out, and go through. I had to go through 2 Marios. I had Mario.
This is Mario too.
This is Super Mario.
That's
So
He looks like Super Mario.
see, right? But I can definitely tell you for the last 4 years or so, things have really clicked. And they've clicked because we sit down and, yeah, we're going to have our differences, and politics are going to always play a part in how we're making these decisions. But rational minds have been, come to the top. And it's because of really TxDOT's outstanding direction and advice to folks in my position and in Bruce's position that allow us to make the arguments necessary to our colleagues on other elected bodies and other places to get them to see rational thought and make those decisions.
Well, Mario, I know you and I often talk about, some of the projects that are going on, and one of the things that often comes from you in our conversations is going back to the MPO and running things. How does that work?
Yeah, no, Mark, and I think Kevin makes some very good comments. I see the role of a district engineer in an area like ours as really kind of the glue of the transportation system, and so I see my role, and my role is to build relationships with our various stakeholders, and that's an ongoing process. I'm a big believer that the issues change, the relationships last. So I have regular meetings. I hit the road. I go visit our elected officials or stakeholders or their offices. And we talk about the priorities of the region. We talk about the potential scenarios of funding and leveraging opportunities. So you keep those conversations active, fluid, and regular. And to me, that's a key, because when an issue comes up, such as the 281 opportunity to remove the tolls, I felt like we had done enough legwork in discussing those priorities, that there's a trust factor, there's a level of understanding of, this is the best decision for the region. And especially in our region where it's so broad, once you get outside of the San Antonio city, you still have growing communities like New Braunfels, Bernie, Guadalupe County, that are part of the MPO. And so to me, that is our role, is to make sure that I'm out there explaining and listening to the local priorities, and make sure that we have a consensus on a regional plan. That to me, that's the key.
That's good. Turning up I-35 to the Metroplex, we have Michael Morris, who is the Director of Transportation from the North Central Texas Council of Governments, joined with Brian Barth, who is our district engineer from Fort Worth. And Fort Worth and the Metroplex has been nationally recognized for successful delivery of very large and complex projects, public-private partnerships requiring participation not just from TxDOT and the metropolitan planning organizations, but a host of stakeholders that have to be involved in not only the decision-making, but oftentimes the funding and delivery of some of those projects, the North Tarrant Expressway for one. Michael, can you talk, along with Brian, a little bit about just what has made those projects successful?
Well, Mark, I think one of the themes here is not all of our regions need to do things the same way. So if Dallas-Fort Worth does things a certain way, we're not necessarily trying to sell that to other parts of the state. But I think to first understand, I as a staff person, if you're a current member or a previous member of the Regional Transportation Council, or a current member or a previous member of the North Central Texas Executive Board, could you stand up right now? Mr. Jordan's there, Judge Self is there, Mr. Meadows is there. I represent, as a staff person, a set of local elected officials that sit on a policy body, and then their colleagues back in the regions. Because I think, Mark, you bring up a good point. It's just not the RTC members, it's the chambers of commerce and the business community and the local elected officials that are back in the communities. And the conversation started 20 years ago. We forecasted revenues into the future, change in fuel efficiency, apprehension about gas tax rates. And our RTC said, we're not going to sit on our hands. If our legislature isn't going to increase revenue or Congress isn't going to increase revenue, then we're going to step up and use every possible tool, leveraging innovative thing we can possibly do, because we know our responsibility as the 4th largest region in the country and 15th largest metropolitan economy in the world, is we got to wake up every day focused on the gross domestic product of our region and how we can support the state and nation. And it is from that attitude that the Dallas-Fort Worth region reaches out. And when you have a common spirit that we have a larger responsibility than just being a transportation chair of a local city, that I have this broader responsibility by coming together with TxDOT, Toll Road, DFW International Airport, chambers, companies that build projects, engineers that design projects. It is an integrated responsibility that every day we wake up, quote, as partners, advancing, not incrementally, but really reaching out and taking huge initiatives to build really big projects. And it starts with always having big projects ready. So when we reach out to the district, sometimes we'll reach out to the district to say, look, we need support in something. Sometimes it's Brian and Kelly reaching out, hey, we're in this particular situation, we need to reach out to you. It's not always about money. Sometimes it's analytics, sometimes it's metrics, sometimes it's performance measures, sometimes it's community outreach skills, sometimes it's interpersonal skills. We don't all do the same thing. We share the responsibility to deliver what is necessary. So it's not a conversation that started 6 months ago, it's a conversation that started 20 years ago. So when there is a concern or a criticism, the region is already on step 14 because they've already bought into the responsibility they have as local elected officials to advance a regional, national, and international transportation system. And it is from that perspective that we reach out to our partners to how can we help each other, throw our name badges away, throw our resumes away, focus not on our personal achievement, but focus on the outcomes that drive the safety and the infrastructure of our region and state.
Brian, Michael talked a little bit about having big projects ready and the need to have that, and certainly that's key for your area. Can you talk a little bit about how you all at the district level within Fort Worth coordinate with the RTC in understanding what those priorities are and how their support helps in turn TxDOT as we move forward developing those projects?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. One, let me touch on a few things Michael talked about. It's very important that, and Kelly and I kind of share this, my counterpart in the Dallas district share this, that we've got to be on the same page with the MPO and Michael, and we work real hard to be on the same page. And Mario mentioned about going out and meeting with stakeholders, and we do a lot of that together. The two districts and Michael do a lot of that together. And when we aren't able to do that together, we make sure we're communicating on what those conversations were. But we're involved in the long-range plan, so we know what the priorities are of the MPO. We're involved in the STIP preparation that the MPO does, so we know what those priorities are. And my goal, and I know Kelly shares this, but our goal is to get things ready so we're able to take advantage of these funding opportunities that come up. So that means getting out in front of environmental and getting right-of-way purchased and utilities clear, so when these funding opportunities come up, and to date, those funding opportunities come up kind of unknown. You don't know when they're coming. The one good thing about what happened in the legislature this last session is we now have a stable kind of a revenue stream where we can plan better. But our goal is to get those projects ready, get them shovel ready, so we can take advantage of those funding opportunities that come our way.
Mark, if I could give you... We're not supposed to talk right here.
I'm not controlling it.
If I could just give you a really quick example. Tower 55, two Class 1 railroads working on the biggest freight congestion at-grade problem west of the Mississippi, underneath the Interstate 30-35W corridor. Tiger Grant application. The railroads are partnering with TxDOT. TxDOT's partnering with us. Hey, we can score better if we can get the project engineered at risk, even if we may not win. So we had federal funds. Our federal funds couldn't get to the railroads fast enough. So we went to the Regional Transportation Council and asked the Fort Worth Transportation Authority, remember they're a passenger rail group, not freight. You have local money, would you give to the Class 1 railroads $1.5 million to start engineering on Tower 55? And to reduce your risk, the elected officials through the Regional Transportation Council will pay you back as you build your passenger rail line between downtown Fort Worth and the airport. Because of that 1 year head start, the railroads were able to, through the Tiger grants, have a project already engineered, shovel ready, and they competed against all the other projects across the state, and the federal government awarded money to Tower 55. So the commissioner's notion that these projects have to be ready is music to our ears, because we think we should have projects ready anyway. And I think the message to all of us is you got to really think outside the box in creating relationships and partnerships to make sure those projects get ready. If it's RTC money can go to the district to help get a project ready, or vice versa, or whatever. It's all one integrated team. What's the best way to focus on those outcomes?
Thank you. These partnerships that we're talking about are not just unique to the large metro areas. They've got their own flavor all across the state. And in some of our smaller communities, growing communities, I say smaller, but you know, Tyler's not a small community in many ways, and but it's different than some of the metro areas. But in the East Texas area, Tyler District, the Northeast Texas Regional Mobility Authority, who we have Linda Thomas, who is the chair of that authority, joining us here today, along with Dennis Cooley, who is our district engineer in Tyler. We have been partners for quite a while now between TxDOT and the RMA in delivering a very significant project for your region, Linda, and that's the Toll 49 project. And that partnership and relationship has really evolved along with that project. As that project has developed, the dynamics between TxDOT and the RMA have also evolved and developed as the RMA has grown in its sophistication and capabilities. And wanted just to see if you could talk a little bit about that, Linda, today.
Well, I can't say enough about our relationship with TxDOT. That toll road would not be in existence if it weren't for the support of TxDOT through this entire process. I can remember a number of years ago coming to Austin and for a commission meeting when our RMA was just getting formed under the leadership of Commissioner Jeff Austin. He personally took that project on and brought it into fruition, and Chairman Williamson at that time was visiting with some county that was coming for help for a project, and evidently this project would have been good if you'd had an RMA. And he said, well, do you have one? And they said, oh no, we don't think we need one. He said, well, you better go rethink it. And so we went home and we started thinking too, and Smith and Gregg counties were the visionaries that decided that this would be a good thing in conjunction with Mary Owen, who was the district engineer at that time, and for the East Texas Hourglass, and it would bring the two cities of Longview and Tyler together with a southern route and a northern route. So we kind of think of ourselves as a Northeast Texas plex, if you will, and hopefully one day that vision will actually become into fruition. But at this point in time, we have a 22-mile toll road that is, of our last month, we were projecting 27,000 a month, and we're at 48,000, and that's far beyond what the projections were. But the important thing, I think, especially for huge projects that are going on in the big cities and all, you all have to depend on the rural areas to pull out and do our part, because if your traffic gets bogged down between Dallas and Texarkana, or Dallas and Shreveport, Louisiana, or going across the country, it doesn't fare you well. And so it's our responsibility to do our responsibility of taking care of the I-20 corridor, I-30 corridor, wherever we see bottlenecks along the road.
Dennis, I know that you've been in back in the Tyler district now for a bit. You're one of our longest tenured district engineers in the state. But how do you see the role between TxDOT and the RMA, and how does that impact the decisions and the responsibilities you all have there in Tyler?
We kind of support the RMA in more of a technical aspect, and looking at their alignments and routes and giving suggestions, and looking at what we would need to do on our system to support their improvements in order to make them feasible, in order to make them profitable, in order to continue on the continuity of theirs, because a lot of the routes that currently are looking at on the toll 49 actually will fall back onto our system, which again would be a free system, not a toll, and then it would connect back up with another piece of the toll facility. So we have to look forward, and we have to plan to make improvements to our infrastructure that coordinates and supplements the toll 49 project itself to make the entire route to be as feasible as far and economically viable.
We also have another aspect we're moving into. We have not had the resources, of course, to do anything except work on the toll road itself, but in the next few years, we're going to begin to realize revenues that can be used in the East Texas area, which is really the beauty of the RMA, is that money that is earned in our area, we get to use in our area for projects for the other 11 counties that at this point are on faith joining the RMA, knowing that down the road there would be an opportunity for them. So we're trying to establish and working in conjunction with the East Texas COG on a process for prioritizing projects, even though our funds are limited now, but we have what we jumpstart projects. We also help our counties with whatever resources that we may have, if they need some engineering or some financial, anything that could be utilized to help our counties in this interim time. But we feel we have a bright future ahead.
Commissioner Bug, I'd like to kind of come back to a topic that you brought up in your comments and specifically as it relates to some of our metro districts. You've been engaged with some listening tours and some discussions with several of our major metro districts, two of them of which are represented here, that have been talking about opportunities to address congestion in their areas consistent with the governor's charge and our commission's charge. What have your impressions been through those listening tours, and may ask San Antonio and Fort Worth to kind of chime in as well on the significance of bringing those partners together as we make decisions about where we need to invest the resources to best relieve congestion in those areas?
Well, Mark, as you know, but let me share with the audience, when you use the term listening tour, let me explain what's behind that. Again, with the governor's charge to the commission to come up with this congestion relief initiative, what we started doing, as you well know, internally within TxDOT is I formed a task force with probably the top 15 executives at TxDOT, and we have been working diligently since the charge came down last September on coming up with internal planning. But the idea, and this goes to your partnership theme, the idea was that we need to go to the respective communities that we're trying to work with and get out of Austin or get out of the Greer building and go into the communities. And so the listening tour, we've completed the listening tour now in Austin, was our first listening tour. We completed San Antonio the Monday before Christmas. We'll resume. Michael and I had a chance to talk yesterday. We'll be going to Fort Worth on January the 19th. We'll be going to Dallas on January the 20th. And then we'll bring it home to Houston on January the 25th, and then back to Austin for a series of very important meetings at the end of January. The purpose of the listening tour was to, and is to, go to the communities and first in the morning meet with kind of the technical folks that work on transportation issues in each respective community. So for example, our district engineer in San Antonio, Mario Jorge, Mario kind of led the 930 group, and we brought in the MPO, RMA, everyone that kind of works in that area. I know Vic Boyer is in our audience, and Vic works with transportation issues. Whoever in that respective community is really trying to, can bring a perspective and bring consensus, and that was our goal of the 930 technical session, is really trying to drive consensus on what are the worst choke points in your respective areas. What should TxDOT be focusing on? And then what we did was we have a 1:30 meeting, and that's where we bring the elected officials and kind of the centers of influence in that respective community. And I can't tell you how important and valuable it's been. You've accompanied me on these, but the idea is that as a commissioner leading this effort, I wanted to go into the respective communities, hear the points of view from the folks in those respective communities, and be building that consensus so that as we move forward, you talk about a partnership, in order to execute on the vision of the whole congestion relief initiative on a statewide basis, you have to have a very good partnership. And you know, a good partnership always begins with a foundation that is based on trust and confidence. And the way you build trust and confidence, based on my experience, is you've got to sit down and have frank conversations with the folks that you want to be partners with. And we definitely want to be partners with the stakeholders in each of these 5 metropolitan areas that we're trying to build this with. So the listening tours, the 2 that we've had thus far in Austin and San Antonio, I think have really been invaluable. We're looking forward to proceeding with the Fort Worth, the Dallas, and the Houston, and then bring all this back and share it with my colleagues on the commission. I want to also thank Chairman Lewis for the leadership that he's given and the absolute rock-solid support that the other commissioners and Chairman Lewis have given on the importance of this congestion relief initiative. But it all comes down to everybody working together, building relationships, executing on those partnerships. And remember what Albert Einstein said, that a vision without execution is an hallucination. And we will not let congestion relief be just a vision. We're going to need our partners to execute.
I'd like to just go back over to Michael, because Michael, you kind of touched on this during your comments about how the region really is always prepared with priorities and projects that are ready to go. And one of the things that I think we've seen, Commissioner, as we've gone through these listening tours, is the regions, be it, you know, the San Antonios or Austins or the Dallas Fort Worth, they're ready. They know what their list of priorities are and are able to articulate that. And just wanted to see if you could maybe expand upon that a little bit, Michael, because you did touch on it with your initial comments.
Well, Mark, thank you. And Commissioner, I think what you're doing is not just looking at the first wave, potentially, of congestion relief projects. I think what you're doing is you're cementing a critical, this theme is partnership with a big P, that says, wow, if we can get all parts of the state working together, that's connected from the governor's office, through the commission, through headquarters staff, and in our case, through our district engineers, reaching out to our partners, developing grassroots consensus building. This is a powerful thing that I believe will have dividends, not just in what you're doing immediately, but down the road. And I think we should leave this conference with this notion of what the commissioner is describing as an element of partnership that may be really powerful to continue the Texas success story with regard to infrastructure. To your question directly, Mark, you know, in a region that grows by 1 million people every decade since 1960, so 60 to 70 a million, 70 to 80 a million, and to think that a county like Collin County, more people will move to Collin County in the next 25 years than live in Collin County. Tarrant County someday may be bigger than Dallas County. And giving a metropolitan planning organization's responsibility is not what are the problems today. We have to wake up and solve the problems 20, 25 years into the future. You always have to have large projects ready. So in this particular case, our communication to our Regional Transportation Council next week is the importance of this partnership, the importance of delivering projects early. So to do so, we reached out to Brian in the West. Brian has projects that are part of a construction sequence. We often build in our regions stage projects over time. So we're going to reach into those particular projects. In the Eastern Subregion, we're going to be able to grab a project that's been a really big project that alleviates a major congestion problem in and around downtown, which will free up, as we're already thinking, Prop 7 revenues to now go to priority number 2 in North Dallas County, and then bring relief to Collin County in project number 3. So the sequencing of the projects, no one knew there was going to be a stimulus program. But if you had projects ready, you took advantage of the stimulus program. We in transportation as technical people, we can't forecast what all of our policy officials will do, but we all can work hard to develop consensus in our communities. So if asked, if drafted, if requested, we can bring forward the best possible combinations. And I think that's a message that you're seeing from 3. One, created an institution and a revenue stream to help. If TxDOT revenue isn't there, the RMA could be there in the future. You have San Antonio working hard, developing a vision and a future to take advantage of Prop 1, 7, and the new federal funds. And you have a Dallas-Fort Worth region that's different in their interest to leverage projects and to squeeze more lane miles out of every public sector dollar. We don't all have to do it the same, but we should have a commitment to have the best possible projects ready and do so through a partnership. Wouldn't it be interesting to say, gee, we had really these great projects for 15 years, but no one rang our doorbell? That's not what's on the horizon for the next 10 years with Prop 1, Prop 7, elimination of diversions, a federal bill that now is funded for 5 years, and this sort of can-do system integration of being all on the same page as we move forward. I think it's a terrific opportunity for all of our elected officials in the state.
I want to take us on a slightly different variation, come back to San Antonio, to Kevin and Mario. Sometimes those partnerships go beyond just project development, but also the evolution of some of the organizations we work with. And a couple of years ago, the MPO, under the new census designation, had to expand and had to grow beyond Bexar County and take in Comal County and parts of some of the surrounding counties, Kendall and others. That wasn't necessarily an easy exercise because you had people who were comfortable with the way things were, areas that were outside that weren't so sure they wanted to be part of this party, but nevertheless it was something that had to occur. And I know that we had conversations with the MPO, with you, Commissioner, and with some of these others to try to bring those folks together. And we did that successfully, but wanted just to get your impression on how that process worked well, and how it is going now that everybody has had a chance to work together on the MPO.
I'm very glad you asked that question because, this is going to happen again, and not just in the San Antonio area. It's going to happen across the state where, our MPOs are going to have to expand. And how you go about that process will determine whether or not you're successful. I did want to add one thing to the meetings that Bruce has been holding. You'll remember at 1:30 when we had a number of different electeds in there. Everybody's got their idea of what's the best thing to do. So part of what I see has been really good in what you're doing is it's giving us an opportunity to educate those that might not be as close to day-to-day transportation issues as we would like. And it gives us the opportunity to explain to them why we think these are the priority pieces. And so without that, you'd still have them arguing as we'd go down the line. So I wanted to thank you for that. But back to the expansion of the MPO. We took in Guadalupe County, Comal County, and parts of Kendall, specifically Bernie. This was the first expansion that the San Antonio MPO had ever gone through. And the way we did that is much like I've heard talked about before, we went there. We didn't say come here and talk to us. Mm-hmm. We went there and we talked to them. And our whole sales point was that, look, we know you think we're the 800-pound gorilla and we're going to suck up all the resources. Yeah, and that's why they didn't want to be there. I don't blame them. I understand it. They wanted to form their own MPO, but just didn't quite hit the census numbers that were needed. They fell into that range of where they were going to lose some of their rural dollars, but not qualify for MPO dollars. So at any rate, it took a lot of salesmanship, a lot of relationship building with, specifically the electeds from a number of different, smaller cities, suburban cities, as well as the county governments, to let them know that, hey, we're not going to screw you. We're going to do a good job by you. And so, part of that included expanding the number of folks on our MPO. I've always been a believer that, less is more. The more people you have on a body, the harder it is to make decisions. You could look at Congress if you want an example of that. At any rate, but we went from 19 to 21, and I think we did a very fair representation from folks. And one of the things that I think sold it better than anything else was our commitment at the Alamo MPO is that we will focus on what we call regional projects. So when there are dollars available, when there are plans that we want to put in place, we want to see that, this is going to help our region, not specific to this county or this city or that city, but how's it going to help interconnect our overall region. So that's one of our very first priorities that we look at as a body when we're doing our planning. And if it meets that criteria, then it goes up to the top of the priority list. And I think that, one sort of caveat or rule or policy that we sort of live by had a lot to do with the folks that came into our MPO saying, you know what, we're going to be okay. This is going to work. So,
Mark?
And just to add a little bit to what Kevin said, there was some skepticism early on from the officials that were coming into the MPO from kind of the outer areas. And so I think our MPO turned the corner when Proposition 1 kind of became on the horizon, even before it had passed. We began discussions about a 10-year plan of potential Prop 1 projects. And I think that allowed us to as soon as Proposition 1 passed, the MPO took action and developed a 10-year project plan for Proposition 1. And that, I think, became a very regional plan and one that allowed us to really start working on a lot of these projects. And whether we use Proposition 1 or Proposition 7 or any other funding, I think everyone around the table felt like they were included in the planning process, and we were looking at region, not a city or county specific project. So that solidified it, I think.
That's exactly right. I mean, that was the action of doing what we said we were going to do. And
follow through.
That sealed the deal.
I know, Linda, you chair what is in fact the largest RMA in the state. You cover a lot of territory, so expanding territory, is not something that is foreign to your area of responsibilities. And how has your work and relationship, not only with district, but with Dennis and the Tyler district, but you include our Atlanta district as well. how has the RMA managed to keep all of your members engaged in the process, and what has TxDOT's role been in helping you in that area?
Well, the relationship between the DEs in our area certainly simplify things, but as far as, we're sort of like a big family, East Texas family. I think half of us are all related to each other throughout the area. But I think maybe the word hungry has a lot to do with it. When you're hungry and you know that you have to work hard, it makes you a lot easier to get along with somebody else who can be helpful to you as well. So I'm sure I probably have a Pollyanna attitude about how happy all our board members are on any given day, but for the most part, and of course, we have a strictly volunteer board. In fact, I'm very proud to say we had 6 members of our board here for the forum, which is a first. But they all come from communities in the area, and they know their communities, they know the people in the communities, so that gives us credibility. We move our meetings around from county to county, which now in the days of technology makes it a little difficult to get the Wi-Fi and all you need in small East Texas county seats. But we do that, and I think it helps us stay in touch with our stakeholders. And basically, you know, we're coming to a time when things may get a little tense, because when revenues become available, then everybody, of course, wants their piece of the pie. So just like you all are talking about the priorities, determining the priorities, the most important. But I think we will focus on regional projects, connectivity. That's a big thing in the rural areas. But we still have to take care of local needs as be. But for the most part, it's going to be trying to work in keeping with the district office and the projects that TxDOT has together. Also, we do a lot of networking and interfacing with every transportation organization in our area, with the COG, the rural planning, the MPOs are invaluable. We have had wonderful relationships with our MPOs, and the one in Tyler, for example, was that community got together and determined that the loop, as we call the Toll 49, was their major focus. And it took, I don't know how many years of accumulating resources to be able to do that. And then with the help of TxDOT, started the project, and then we got a little stimulus money and, you know, just down the road. So we've been primed and ready to go with the next section whenever that time may be. But I'd say for the most part, it's been real good. Now it may fall tomorrow to get apart tomorrow, but it's kind of like having a dozen eggs. You know, it's very, very fragile. And we want to keep everybody in the loop and feel like that they're a part of our organization.
I think that's a common theme with all of our partners. It's always a fragile relationship that they have, but you all managed to do it successfully, and that's a tribute to the relationships and the hard work that goes into it. Wanted to pause here just for a minute and see if there were any questions from members of the audience. I don't know if there were anything that came in from the tweeting or the social. I think this question right over. Hand was up. I'm sorry, I can't really see very well with the lights. I think Becky's going to pass you the mic. Don't be afraid to ask questions. They told us we have this room till 3 o'clock.
Thank you. I guess I really have kind of a two-part question. First, for Commissioner Bogg in relation to the congestion initiative and the use of mass transportation. Seems like Texans feel very strongly about driving their own personal vehicles to get where they want to go. The use of mass transportation doesn't seem to be especially ingrained in Texas communities like it is in some other major metropolitan areas in the country. And so when you talk about the population growth estimates and you're trying to forecast what's going to happen in 20, 30 years, how does the notion that the millennials, as we've heard, they're not interested in driving anymore. They'd rather, have an easier way to get around. How does that translate into your forecasting in terms of what we might see with the millennial and future generations and their use of vehicles, and how does that play into the plans for building more infrastructure as opposed to building more mass transportation and its use? And then if there is a tendency to try to lean toward mass transportation, what kind of partnership opportunities are there in the communities to help change that mindset of Texans that this is a better alternative than driving your own vehicle, possibly, than building more roads? So.
That was a little muffled.
It was.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I know that we've heard, and that the topic of mass transit came up in our conversation in San Antonio,
Right.
and I think the group recognized the need for that. One of the challenges that we had is the available sources of funds, and that were constitutionally dedicated to the to highway projects, and so while we understood and we heard that message, our ability to directly fund that was not available because the funds that were available were constitutionally dedicated to highways. But the topic came up about how this process could free up other revenue sources that could be part of that. And I know that was a theme that we heard.
Right. And thanks for the question. Transit does come up, and transit plays an important role in a lot of local communities. I know in San Antonio, our VIA bus system is very important and will continue to be a robust part of the transportation solution. As Mark mentioned, the funding streams, the funding streams that we're using, that we're deploying to really put the 18-inch guns on this congestion relief initiative are Prop 1, ending diversions, and Prop 7. And those funds are directed at basically state highway improvements. And so we're using those funds. On the subject of transit, beyond the important role that transit plays in all the metropolitan areas and frankly in our rural areas and part of the connectivity for the state of Texas, you have to remember that 97% of Texans today basically get behind the wheel of their pickup truck or their car. And the realities are, getting back to what Governor Abbott has said about customer service, 97% of our customers get behind the wheel of their car or their pickup truck and go to work. And so you have to be responsive to your customers and go and address those issues. Having said that, in San Antonio, as part of this listening tour, Congressman Joaquin Castro attended, and he and I had an opportunity to have a dialogue on funding for transit projects. And my suggestion to Congressman Castro, and you heard Congressman Babbitt, who I met with in Washington in October of last year, the transit dollars are, by and large, all allocated to the northeast quadrant of the United States. One of the things in terms of fair share, and you heard Congressman Babbitt talk about that, is those are really more federal dollars that can be deployed and focused on transit issues in Texas. We know we can't pave our way to prosperity here. We have to look at a multimodal system. But the fact of the matter is, the dollars for transit to really address transit are more in the federal area, and they're not from the gas tax fund. It's more in other areas of allocation. So my suggestion to Congressman Castro, and my suggestion in response to your question on transit, is we need to get our Texas congressional delegation in Washington to help us to get our fair share for Texas on getting some of those Northeast Corridor transit dollars reallocated back to the state of Texas.
I do know that with these two regions to our immediate left, San Antonio and Metroplex here, There are elements, though, of these projects that have got very important transit components to them that are being separately funded by by other local fund sources from the Advanced Transportation District funds and RTC funds, that were it not for the combined delivery of state funds to build the highway elements and then the local funds, they would not be able to independently develop a system, but we're able to develop, or looking at developing systems that will provide some incentives for transit development in each of your areas.
Now, Mark, that's an excellent point, and goes to something I was saying earlier, where we had other electeds there that might not be as close to transportation as some of us. Congressman Castro was very adamant about mass transportation. And I think we tried to assure him, as well as the rest of the room, that, hey, mass transportation is not off our radar screen at all. In fact, it's throughout our plans, including, our priority plans of 281 and with its HOV lanes. And those lanes are being built with a combination of, as you said, Advanced Transportation District dollars that are coming from VIA, that are coming from the county, some from TxDOT. It's a mishmash of different funding sources in order to do that. But I think we made it very clear in that meeting that, by no means is mass transportation off of our radar screen. We have an opportunity with Prop 1 and Prop 7 to do some highway stuff, and we're going to do that. But that doesn't mean we're not going to plan for and not going to try to fund mass transportation.
If I could add, I think transportation in the transportation community has to have a home for all element of transportation. And the theme of this group is partnership. The expectation shouldn't be, I hope Brian does not become an expert in transit scheduling in order to minimize the wait time between two transit buses with a transfer.
Me too.
I hope Brian continues to do what he does unbelievably well with Kelly on engineering, design. TxDOT should be proud. They're the best contracting procurement agency in the world. Huge private sector partners to build our projects. Huge private sector engineering community to design them. A terrific story that isn't told enough times. But you should be able to go to your metropolitan planning organization or your local government or something to get your sidewalk, bicycle pedestrian, transit component. Some areas have transportation authorities with regard to passenger rail systems. Not every address needs to be a home for every tool. The notion of this partnership we're talking about is we have a home for everybody. It is up to us to communicate and partner to make sure each of that is addressed. The new theme of our new mobility plan that we hope to bring to the Regional Transportation Council this spring is Dallas-Fort Worth region wishes to be a region of choice. And I think the performance measure for large metropolitan regions in the future, because we have all sorts of folks, we have disabled people, we have people that are trying to find work as a blind person, we got millennials who 30% or so don't even need their driver's license because they have technology and other things to create a work, play, residential, mixed-use development communities like you see in a lot of our urban regions. Texas needs to be a home for all of those folks. And we got to create the partnerships, although complicated, with all these different funding strategies, as the commissioner said. We need to be able to make sure every voice has an opportunity to be heard,